Hey, it's Kim and welcome back to Pokemon Breaks. Today we have another starting your collection video and I wanted to talk a little bit about how I'm getting into playing the TCG, some of the things that have been helpful to me and the things that I've learned along the way. If you enjoy Pokemon, please like and subscribe. It means the absolute world to me. I make a new video every single week. I do a ton of unboxings and other stuff, and I would absolutely love to have you here. And if you have any ideas or questions about starting up a collection or starting to play the game, please leave them down below because I will be adding more to this series as time goes on. In terms of starting to play the game, I guess the first thing that you're gonna need is a deck that you can play with. The biggest piece of advice I have to you that I have learned from experience is start with a pre-built deck. You have a few options here. You can go to your local toy store or big box store and pick up a pre-built Pokemon deck. They make a ton of different ones. They come out every single year. This is the one from London World Championships. This was the Mew deck. Mew is one of my favorite Pokemon, so it makes total sense I would pick up one of these. And the benefit here is that these boxes are not very expensive. The cards in here are not the actual collector Pokemon cards, so you don't need to worry about damaging them. They have a special printed back, which I think is pretty cool. It comes with its own little deck box, which is also really fun, and there's lots of tips in here and stuff to help you learn, like a play mat that has rules and things on it. The other option, and something I would suggest that you do as well as picking up a physical pre-made deck, is downloading the online Pokemon TCG game. The benefit there is it's a free game to download. You can have it on your phone and or your computer. It comes with some pre-built decks, which is super helpful. Again, really good for beginners. And the game online itself will prompt you with all of the rules. So it will prompt you on what things that you can do in your turn. It will remind you to do everything that you can if that's what you want to do. And I think that's really helpful for beginners in terms of learning. Definitely don't be scared about playing online. You can use a mode called Test My Deck, which means that you're just playing against AI. So that's not going to be too intimidating, I would hope, for anybody. But even if you start out playing against real people, it will match you against beginners. So you're not going to get absolutely the first time you try to play. Standard Pokemon decks are going to have 60 cards inside them. I am going to make a completely separate video that's about building decks and the stuff I've learned there. So my suggestion is start with a pre-built deck and we'll go from there. At the beginning of a game, everybody's going to shuffle their cards and you're each going to take 7 cards. You need to make sure that you have a basic Pokemon, which is a Pokemon that's not evolved yet, or maybe it doesn't evolve. As long as you have at least one basic Pokemon, you can start the game. If not, unfortunately, you're going to have to take a mulligan, shuffle your hand back into your deck, and if you have to do that, the other player has the option to draw another card, which is not a great thing. Once everybody's got a basic Pokemon, you put at least one in your active spot, and then you can pop other basics on your bench if you would like to. You then flip a coin to determine who goes first, and you get to call the coin flip. Whoever wins the coin flip gets to either go first or choose the other person to go first, and the game begins. At the start of your turn, you draw a card, and then you have a few options as to what you can do next. You can play as many basics onto your bench as you'd like. You can have a maximum of 6 Pokemon in play at a time. You can attach 1 energy card for turn, and some cards even have special abilities that allow you to attach more than 1 energy card. You can play as many item cards as you like. Item cards can be super helpful in terms of allowing you to find other cards that you need out of your deck, or perhaps helping you attach more energy cards or locating things that you need. You can also play trainer cards. If cards are labeled as a supporter, so they have a Pokemon trainer person shown on them, or if they're a stadium, you can only play one of each of those during your turn. Many of those have lots of different abilities that can be helpful to you and potentially be really disruptive to your opponent. A lot of Pokemon cards will also have special abilities. Those might include allowing you to discard or draw more cards, or even add other Pokemon to your bench. You can use as many abilities or standard items during your turn as you'd like, and this can be really helpful for getting you set up. If you choose to attack with one of your Pokemon, that will end your turn. Now, pretty much everything in the Pokemon TCG with regards to attacks is going to have an energy cost. Energy cards are located throughout your deck. Usually you might have around 10 in a standard deck, and you need to be able to attach energy cards to your Pokemon in order to complete attacks. Some cards will even force you to discard energies when you do an attack. I feel like with most things, the easiest way to learn how to do them is to actually have a go. I've tried a couple of times to explain how the game works just in a vacuum, and it doesn't really make very much sense. It's honestly not that complicated of a TCG game, but it's one of those things I think that you need to have a go at and just be doing to make the most sense out of it. We're gonna play a game on the online TCG, and if you haven't tried it yet, I would really encourage you to give it a crack. You get some free pre-built decks in there, and it's a really good way to learn. So I'm gonna be playing my Gardevoir deck, which is one of my absolute favorite decks with the current meta. Prior to that, I was playing Mew, which I really enjoyed. I have my own Mew deck, which is slightly modified from that London Championships one, and it's really fun to just practice with different things. I think Psychic and Grass are probably my preference though. So before the game starts, you need to figure out who's gonna go first. There is always a coin flip, and luckily we get to call it. So I'm gonna choose heads, which is what I pretty much always pick. If we get tails, that means that my opponent gets to choose who goes first. If we got heads, I would get to pick. There's a few different things in Pokemon decks that will determine if you're better off going first or second. Going first means that you can get more Pokemon on the bench, so particularly if you have a lot of stuff you need to evolve, that can be really useful. I tend to prefer playing second because it means that I can play supporters, and I have a couple of supporters in here that I like to have during my first turn. In order to be able to start the game, you need to have at least one basic Pokemon that you can put on the bench, which we did in our routes. If you don't have any basic Pokemon, it means that you have to take what's called a mulligan, and that means you'll have to draw 7 cards to start over again, which is exactly what's happened to my opponent. So they didn't have any basic Pokemon. They got a ton of bougie cards, so golds and full arts, but no basics, so they needed to start over. The benefit there is because they had to take a mulligan, we actually get to draw some extra cards. You get 7 cards on your first turn. And you need to have at least one basic that you can put down. And then once you've done that, you're going to put down your prize cards. A standard game will have 6 prize cards. And that links into how you actually win. I don't have any other basics I can put down, so there's nothing else I can do before we start the game. So it looks like we're playing against a Miraidon deck, which is very common in the current meta. Miraidon has this ability that allows you to add extra basic Pokemon to your bench. So once during your turn, you may search your deck for up to 2 basic electric Pokemon and put them on your deck. It allows this deck to set up really quickly. He's pulled out another Miraidon, which means that he can actually pick another basic if he'd like. During your first turn, if you're playing first, you're not allowed to play any supporters, and you also can't attack in your first turn. Luckily, we can play supporters, but I don't know that we have any that are going to be very helpful for us in the very beginning. You'll notice that he is using what's called abilities. So his Miraidon had the Tandem Unit ability, which allowed him to get 2 extra Pokemon. The Raikou has an ability called Fleet-Footed. So once during your turn, if this Pokemon is in the active spot, you can draw a card. Having draw engines in the game is super important. You do need to make sure that you, I guess, have access to the cards that you want when you're trying to play. The draw engine I use for the most part in this deck is the Kirlia. So Kirlia has an ability called Refinement, so you can discard a card and then draw 2 cards. It helps you get rid of things that you don't need, and then you get to draw something else, which is great. So at the beginning of my turn, I'm going to draw a card. It's Manaphy, which is not the most helpful thing, unfortunately, in terms of how we like to play this deck, but that's okay. I will go ahead and get a Manaphy on the bench because I do believe that his deck has some things that can do damage to my benched Pokemon, and Manaphy has this really cool ability called Wave Veil that prevents all damage done to your benched Pokemon by your opponent. I do want to get another Routes out onto the bench. I'm thinking perhaps I want Mew, actually. We'll give this a go. So what I'm going to do for my turn, I'm going to get my Mew on the bench. I'm going to attach an energy for turn, so you can only attach 1 energy for turn. And I'm actually going to use that to retreat my routes. It will discard the energy. And I'm going to put my Mew in the active spot because it has this ability called Mysterious Tail, which allows you to look at your top 6 cards and reveal an item and then shuffle your other cards back into your deck. I have an item in this deck called Battle VIP Pass, which allows me to put 2 basic Pokemon on my bench, and that is what I want. So there we go, a roundabout way to do it, but we managed to get what we needed. I wanted to get a Zacian out in the first turn. That is a good thing to have on my bench. I'm also going to play a Collapsed Stadium card. So this is a trainer card. I can play as many trainer cards as I'd like. So items, you can only play 1 stadium in a turn, and you can only play 1 supporter in a turn. But this will actually be really helpful to me because it means you can only have 4 benched Pokemon. It's going to mean he has to discard one of his, which we're just being a little bit disruptive. He will probably get rid of one of his Miraidons, but that's fine. We're just forcing something off. Called it. All right. I have a couple of supporter cards in here. So because I went second, I can play a supporter, but neither of them are going to be useful to me really at the moment. So I can pick 2 Pokemon from my discard pile or energy cards, which I don't really have. Or I could play Serena, which is discarding cards from my hand and then drawing until I have 5, or swapping out one of his Pokemon, which I don't really want to do either. I am going to go ahead and use my Roar of the Sword ability on Zacian, which allows me to attach an energy. This is in addition to attaching for turn, but it does end my turn. Zacian is my main attacker here, so we'll just try to power it up as we can. You'll notice that all attacks basically on Pokemon cards will have some sort of energy cost associated. So for instance, his Raichu is the one that he's powering up, and it has an attack called Dynamic Spark. You can discard any amount of electric energy from your Pokemon, and it does 60 for each card you discarded in this way. That means Raichu can be really threatening, particularly if he's had a way of getting loads of energy attached to other Pokemon cards. So he's done 60 damage, which is enough to knock out my Mew. The Mew then goes into the discard pile, and that means he's allowed to draw a card from his prize cards. There's a few different ways that you can win the Pokemon TCG game, but the primary way is by collecting all of your prizes. A standard game, you're going to have 6 prize cards, and you win by collecting all of them by killing your opponent's Pokemon. I'm going to go ahead and evolve my routes into Aquilea, which is great. So you can evolve Pokemon from one stage to the next, as long as it's been out for at least a turn. I will also use my Radiant Greninja's ability. I don't know if I want to do that. What will I do? We could just be a bit disruptive. Choose. We'll attach for turn. I don't think I'm going to discard that. I just want to draw some more cards. All right, we're going to discard a Clara. We'll see how we go. Okay. We can refinement away the Battle VIP Pass. So this item card is something you can only use during your first turn. So once your first turn is over, it's just not very helpful at all. So I'm going to get rid of that and draw a few more cards. We've also already attached for turn, so we can go ahead and use this Concealed Cards ability to get rid of one of our others. And I'll get another routes on the bench. I think that's going to be helpful because we now have an item called a Rare Candy, and that's going to allow us to evolve routes in our next turn as long as something horrible doesn't happen to it. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end my turn by using my Roar of the Sword ability, and I will just attach another energy to my Zacian, and that means I can attack with it next turn as long as it's not KO'd. His Raichu will need another energy attached to it to be able to do any real sort of attack. But unfortunately, these Flaffies allow him to attach lots of energies during his turn. This is one of the reasons that this Miraidon deck is so frustrating and competitive. Flaffy is a really good generator for electric energy on his Pokemon because of this ability called Dynamotor. Once during your turn, you may attach an electric energy card from your discard pile to one of your bench Pokemon. So when he played Professor's Research, he discarded a number of energy cards that he's going to be able to Dynamotor onto himself. So we'll see what he gets out next. Of course, it's another Flaffy. So because he's got another Flaffy on the board, he can play that Dynamotor attack, that Dynamotor ability again. And the way this Raichu works is that as many energies as he discards, he can do 60 more damage. So there's a possibility he can kill my Zacian this turn. There's a few decks in the TCG that just take really long turns. Okay, so he's obviously just being kind and not using that attack, which is very interesting. Okay, so what we can do is we will play a rare candy to evolve my Gardevoir. I'm going to go ahead and attach for turn, and I will play a Fog Crystal to get another energy that we can discard with my Radiant Greninja, and I can use that to draw some more cards. We might even get, nope, we didn't get another energy to discard. We will put Forest Seal Stone is a V-Star item, so it allows you to actually seek out any single card that you want from your deck, so it's a really helpful card. I don't know exactly what I would be after right now if I played it. I'm going to go ahead and Refinement away perhaps a Kirlia. I don't really need that this turn. And of course now we get an energy with no way to discard it. Oh, we do have a way. Never mind. We can use the Ultra Ball. I'm going to use this Shining Arcana ability. So once during your turn, you may look at the top 2 cards of your deck and attach any number of basic energy cards you find there. We'll go ahead and do that as well. We didn't get any basic energy cards, so that's unfortunate. But I can use an Ultra Ball to get rid of this energy and the other Kirlia. We don't really have a way to use it. Not necessarily anything I need. We'll get the other Zacian out because we might need it very shortly. And then I can use this Psychic Embrace ability. This is one of the reasons that Gardevoir is so competitive. Gardevoir EX has an ability that as often as you like during your turn, you may attach a basic Psychic Energy card from your discard pile to one of your Psychic Pokemon. If you attach energy to Pokemon in this way, you put 2 damage counters on it. So what we can do is we can power up the Zacian a fair bit more. And with Zacian's attack, which I'll show you in a second, it's able to do more damage for every energy card that's attached to it. So we're going to get 8 energy cards onto Zacian. It's got 8 damage, so it's still pretty tough. And it's going to do 300 damage. So we're going to well and truly get rid of the Raichu. If you're better at math than I am, you would not have done that many energies because it was unnecessary, and now the Zacian is a little bit more of a liability. As I said, I am newer to the game. I'm still learning, so we're sharing this experience together. Now, his attack from Raikou is based on how many benched Pokemon there are. So it does 20 damage for each benched Pokemon. The Collapse Stadium is really helpful in playing against Raichu because it forces everyone's bench down at least a little bit. The Judge card wasn't the worst thing to have happened to us. That is a trainer card that makes everyone discard their hand and then draw 4 new cards instead. We luckily actually got the Zacian back anyway, so even if he knocks this one out, we can get another one. He wants me to put forward something he can kill, so I'll give him the Manaphy. That's all right. So this card is called an Escape Rope, and it allows the player that played it to swap out their active Pokemon. It forces the other player to do theirs first. It's an alternative to other cards like Boss's Orders, where you get to dictate what card comes forward. But he's made me swap out my Pokemon for a Manaphy that he could knock out, so he gets another prize card. I will go ahead and use my Shining Arcana ability and just see if we can get another energy card to attach, which we can't. That is okay. I definitely don't want to play Worker. This is one of my supporters. It allows you to draw 3 cards but forces you to discard a Stadium. I would like to keep the Collapse Stadium because I think that's doing more frustration for him than it is for me. I also have this card called Penny, which allows me to put one of my basic Pokemon and all attached cards into my hand, which can be really useful, for instance, if you have a basic like a Zacian that has a lot of damage on it and you want to be able to pick it up without it costing you prize cards. It's also really good if you're running something like Lumineon V. That's one card that is a little bit of reliability. It's helpful when you put it down because it allows you to get some supporter cards, but then after that it's 2 prize cards and it's usually just sitting on your bench and doing nothing useful. I'm getting stressed. I find these games a little bit stressful. It's fun and I enjoy it, but it's stressful. So the really helpful thing, I guess, about getting your prize cards is often they are cards that you might like to be able to play. So we got our Miriam. This is one of the really fun things about playing online is when you open packs, you might get some really special artwork cards that you don't even have in person yet. But it's really fun to kind of bougie up your decks and play with them online. That's how I got these special art Zacians. That's also obviously how I got the Penny. I'll show you in the store as well. You can actually buy special cards on the online TCG as well if you like. That concealed cards ability is really good in terms of being a draw engine, especially if you're using cards like Flaffy that allow you to attach energy from your discard pile to your Pokemon cards. Now what you'll notice is when he played a Stadium card, it got rid of mine. So that is always how Stadium cards work. Once a new one comes out, it gets rid of the previous Stadium. It's obviously useful for him to have more Pokemon on his bench, depending on what cards you'd like to play. It also, this Beach Court Stadium reduces the retreat cost. So instead of having to pay an energy card to retreat the Raikou if he wanted to pull something else forward, he doesn't need to pay anything. And similarly, I would only need to discard 1 energy from my Zacian instead of 2. There goes Zacian. So he gets to take 2 prize cards and we can put another card out into the active. Luckily though, we are going to be able to power up this other Zacian enough to knock out his Raikou. All we need to do is, I'm going to go ahead and play Judge actually. Either way, it doesn't matter, does it? Roxanne is a really fun trainer card. So this is kind of a last-ditch effort card, and it's really useful if you're losing a game in particular. You can only use this card if your opponent has 3 or fewer prize cards remaining, which he does. Each player shuffles their hand into their deck, and then you draw 6 cards, and your opponent draws 2. So if I did think that this game was going to go on a bit longer, I would definitely think that that would be a good one to play. I'm going to attach an energy for turn, and then I'm going to use my Shining Arcana ability to draw 2 more cards, possibly an energy, which we didn't get, that's okay. And then I'm going to use my Psychic Embrace ability to attach more energy onto Zacian so that I can knock out his Raikou V. So each energy that we attach does a bit of damage. This Gardevoir won't allow you to attach enough energy to knock out one of your Pokemon. Sometimes that actually would be really advantageous if you just want to get rid of something that you, for whatever reason, can't retreat. But we've attached just enough energy to do 210 damage, which is going to be enough to knock out the Zacian. That will allow us to draw our final 2 prize cards, which wins us the game. The other way that you can win in a game is if someone decks out, which means that they draw so many cards that they have no more cards left in their deck. You are at risk of that happening if you run a deck that allows you to draw loads of cards. So hopefully that was fun. It showed you a few of the mechanics in the TCG. There's a couple of things that we didn't get to cover that time, like special conditions, and I will definitely be making another video in the future about how to build your own decks. That's one of the things that I've really enjoyed about the game is experimenting with my own decks and learning how to put things together and what sorts of cards can work synergistically together. I'm going to put some links down below to some other sites and YouTubers that I think are really helpful if you're interested interested in learning and would like to learn a little bit more. And leave me some comments down below to let me know what you'd like to know more about for next time. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I make a new video every single week, so please subscribe if you haven't already. It means the absolute world. I hope that you have a wonderful week, and until next time, look after yourself. Bye.